Good afternoon, everyone. This is the Sunshine Coast Regional District regular board meeting of Thursday, April the 9th, 2020. I'd like to officially call us to order and welcome you all and thank you all for being here today. I'd like to acknowledge that we are within the territory, our board office is within the territory of the Seashell First Nation, but we join you today from within the Squamish and the Seashell First Nation, as we all come to you from various locations across the Sunshine Coast, and just grateful to be here as we meet in unparalleled times. We have an agenda in front of us. I'm going to look to see if staff has anything that they'd like us to add in, or if directors have anything that they would like to add in today. Okay, seeing none, I'm going to ask for a motion to adopt the agenda, please. So moved and seconded. All those in favor? Motion carries. We have 3 sets of minutes. So I'd ask for a motion to receive, and we'll go through these one by one, and if just in case there's, sorry?
Donna was waving wildly and Sherry's unmuted.
Okay, Sherry?
Thank you, Chair. I just want to check in with staff if we had a COVID update that we wanted to add to the agenda.
Oh, yes, I see a thumbs up from the CAO. Okay, so we will bring that up under, I guess, do you want to do that as part of business arising from the minutes and unfinished business, seeing as it's continual? Okay, we'll do that. So we'll have the COVID update after we go through the minutes from our previous meetings. Okay. So we have 3 sets of board minutes. We have the regular meeting minutes of Annex A, pages 1 to 9, and these are the regular board meeting minutes of March 26, 2020. I'm going to ask for a motion to receive and adopt those minutes, please. So moved, seconded. All those in favor? Motion carries. Annex B, the special emergency board meeting minutes of March 30th, 2020, Annex B, pages 10 to 14 of the package. Move to receive and adopt, please. So moved, seconded. Director Ties, did you have a question? No, okay. All those in favor? Motion carries. Number 4, the Annex C, pages 15 to 16, the special emergency board meeting minutes of March 31st, 2020. Motion to receive and adopt, please. So moved and seconded. All those in favor? Motion carries. Before we go to the COVID-19 update, is there any other business arising from the minutes or unfinished business? Director Hiltz, please.
Just a question on page 2 in the childcare. Recommendation 2 is, and further that staff appoint. Is that administration or elected that do the appointing?
Okay, I will, and that was on page 2, Director Hiltz?
Page 2, yes. Yeah.
Okay, I will look to staff for an answer on that. GM Hall?
Thank you, Chair. I'm reflecting on the wording of the recommendation and the recommendation that came from the consultant that undertook the study. Staff's recollection was that this was a staff appointment to oversee coordination at a staff level, and that if there were items requiring decision, that they would be brought forward to the respective local government elected body for consideration.
Okay, thank you. Any other unfinished business or business from the business arising from the minutes before we go to the COVID-19 update? Seeing none, I guess we'll start with the CAO and you can direct from there.
For the COVID-19 update?
Yes, please, sir.
Absolutely. Thank you for the opportunity. I think a new piece of information that we've learned is the province is now determined that all local and regional governments are counted in the mix with all of the essential services. So that's a new piece of information. I'll go through a few of the different departments, and then if there's any questions arising, some of the GMs can answer specific areas. For our buses, we have increased our cleaning regimen. We've modified our schedule somewhat, and we've brought in additional measures to encourage physical distancing and keep the drivers safe, which includes not taking fares any longer, and everybody comes in and exits the bus from the rear doors. That helps to protect the drivers. At our landfills in Seashelt and Pender Harbor, we've also initiated measures to promote physical distancing and increased cleaning and safety. One of the things that we do note, though, with everybody working at home and everybody staying at home, to be honest, it'd be kind of nice if people actually didn't take that as an opportunity to flood our landfills with their spring cleaning and project garbage. There's a degree that they're realizing that they need to stay away from work. They need to physically distance themselves. And I guess it seems like a really good time to take a bunch of extra stuff to our dumps and landfills. So there's an area that's been interesting where as other things are going down, those things are going up. In utility services, water and wastewater, heightening cleaning regimes and instituting measures to promote safe physical distancing. Staff in all of our departments that can be working remotely are working remotely. And the only people we have actually going into our offices are people that absolutely have to go there for a specific reason, or they can't otherwise work at home, but the work they're doing is deemed essential. So we're trying to make sure that we minimize any people working within the offices themselves. We continue to have many of our staff supporting our emergency operations center, and we're working closely with our other municipalities. And I would say in many ways, the municipalities are working more closely than we've ever worked before, which is an accidental positive of this. And I think what I'll do is I'll turn it over to Jerry to see if there's some pieces I missed, and he's got a bit of an update on our rec facilities and their ability to be used for washrooms and showering purposes.
Go ahead, Mr. Parker.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, CEO McKinley. Just a few other things. We continue to have staff working in our parks. They are continuing to look after things and maintain those areas that remain open. We are working very closely with the Emergency Operations Center, which is up and running at level 2, to make sure that the tasks that they're focused on can be supported. One of the things we are finding throughout the Sunshine Coast is that there is a real effort, I guess, to make sure that we have sufficient cleaning supplies and personal protective equipment. And so we're trying to make sure we funnel all of those kinds of requests in through our EOC so that we can make some informed decisions when prioritizing the kind of work to be completed. Working very closely with our staff as well, trying to ensure that we have fully trained staff wearing proper personal protective equipment to enable access to some washrooms and or showers, and that work continues. We're also awaiting information from our PREOC, or Provincial Emergency Operations Center, as to expenditure requests to support other measures. And that's, and as CEO McKinley mentioned, we have a lot of staff working remotely, and we're continuing to explore what additional needs might be arising through the EOC. Thank you.
And one thing just to note on the expenditures with the EOC, I just came from a call with Minister Robinson, and that's one of the things, that's what I brought up as being a key issue for us right now, is that backlog in expenditures and wanting to get that moving through. And she said that is something that they are working on. So I'm going to look and see if there's any other comments from staff before I go to the questions from directors. our CFO or GM planning, GM Rosenbaum, corporate officer, feel free to unmute if you'd like to add anything. Otherwise, I'm going to go first to Director Kroll and then Director McMahon. So,
okay, Chair. This is sort of further to what CAO McKinley was saying. The Gibsons green waste, the town of Gibsons has juggled staff to sort of maintain there's sort of a vigilant presence there and keeping it dealt with. As with the landfill, there's been an amazing volume of material coming into the green waste in Gibsons, and staff are trying to keep on top of it, but it's certainly challenging. It's you go out, to the grocery store, and every other vehicle is a pickup truck or a car with a trailer piled with green waste. So it's people are taking advantage of this home time.
yes. Director McMahon?
Yeah, I know this is a bit of a sticky question, but I'll ask it anyway. Yesterday, I saw on CBC News that the city of Vancouver is forecasting a budget deficit of between $61 and $189 million by the end of this year. At some point, it would be really good to take a look at how our budget is being impacted, because I'm curious how our budget situation might differ from theirs, for one thing. And I'd like to understand it. So when might we have an update? I guess that's my question.
Okay. CFO, did you want to take that, or the CAO?
Yeah, and I had the pleasure of reading that report from the City of Vancouver yesterday. And just for the board's awareness, most certainly am very aware of how other organizations are forecasting. Obviously, we're much different than the City of Vancouver. So the areas of which they are forecasting lost revenues are things related to lost traffic, fine, parking tickets, etc. So we are somewhat in a different situation. I think us modifying our budget just last week was one of the first measures as far as forecasting for this particular incidents. And we will provide continued updates as far as if there's any other further financial implications, because we would most likely require a financial plan amendment, and or if we are facing any deficits or anticipated deficits, we would bring those to the board's attention quite urgently. So I think as a regional district too, we are far different than a municipality because our funds are so segregated.
Thank you. Director McMahon, does that help with your question? Great. Okay. I don't see any other questions or comments. CAO, would you like to close out on the COVID-19 update for today?
The only other thing to add really is that throughout this, the outstanding work that staff have been doing under fairly difficult circumstances, and the amazing support that we've had from the board, and the support we've had from the other communities, the way that the Emergency Operations Center is starting to coalesce now and work as a truly sort of a combined incident command structure and emergency operations center. It's been challenging getting up and running, and I think we're going to find that over the next short while and that things are working fairly smoothly. There's still so many unanswered questions and so many unknowns moving forward, but just a lot of gratitude to a lot of people that are working incredibly hard.
Thank you for acknowledging that, and on behalf of the board, just thank you to all of our staff as well, and for working hard and helping everyone through this. Any other comments from staff or directors before we move on? Okay, just a note for any of our audience that is listening, if you're listening to us live, you can type in a question prior to the question period at the end of our agenda. So feel free to type in a question at any time, and we will get to your questions when we get down to the end of our agenda. Okay. So with that, we have no presentations or delegations today. We do have reports. So can I ask for a motion to receive? I'm going to ask for a motion to receive all of our reports and communications, and then we'll go through and deal with them individually after that. So moved and seconded. All those in favor? Motion carries. So the first up we have is our Annex D, pages 17 to 20 on your agenda package, the Corporate and Administrative Services Committee recommendations, numbers 1 through 6 of March 26, 2020. Directors, before we adopt these as a whole, would you like to take any of them out to debate separately? Okay. I will ask for a motion to adopt these recommendations, numbers 1 through 6 of March 26, 2020 from the Corporate and Administrative Services Committee. So moved and seconded. Great. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Motion carries. Annex E, we have our GM Infrastructure Services, options for contract award, raw water reservoir feasibility study phase 4. And this is one that we toss back to our GM and ask for some further analysis on. So GM Rosenbaum, would you like to open with this, please?
Thank you, Chair, for the opportunity to provide an introduction. Based on the discussions at the last regular board meeting, staff analyzed the options available and the potential financial implications and operational implications, and also put it in the context of the bigger issue of addressing the water supply on the coast in the years to come. So the report analyzes 3 options to consider for the board. And one would be to award a contract this year, one would be to defer it to next year, and one would be to defer it to a future date when it can be compared with other options to address the water supply long-term, long-term 2035 and beyond. And staff will be more than pleased to answer any questions the board might have.
Okay, well, I see one hand that's to be expected to be up first. Director McMahon, and then I've got Director Ties. So Director McMahon, would you like to start, please?
Yeah, I'm going to start with that scary phrase. I have prepared a few remarks. So we are facing not one global emergency, but 2. And COVID is the lesser emergency. As Director Ties commented at the elected officials meetup on Monday, when we finally get around to dealing with climate change seriously, government coffers will be bare. People keep talking about getting back to normal as if it's possible. It's not. COVID will have a lasting impact, and our climate emergency requires us to change virtually everything we do, which is why I think we need to reconsider all of our spending. We are treating projects funded from reserves as if they're free because we don't have to raise taxes, but our reserves are precious. We don't know when we'll be able to replenish them, and in the meantime, we have critical infrastructure needs. I've given many reasons why I don't think we should throw good money after bad on a reservoir project that we can't afford economically or environmentally. I understand staff's desire to get all the information, and in the ideal circumstances, I might agree. Last week, Director Hiltz argued that we should stick to the Comprehensive Regional Water Plan. The problem is that that plan doesn't meet our current needs. It did not take into account a lot of factors, such as the severity of climate change and whether in the long run we are better advised to wean ourselves entirely off Chapman Creek water in favor of aquifers. Therefore, I'm going to move option 3 on page 24 to suspend the raw water project until we can take another look at our regional water plan. In the meantime, staff have no lack of other urgent projects to pursue, and politicians can work on a regional governance structure for water so that the community is fully represented in decisions about our water supply, not just participants in the STRD water service who vote at this table.
Okay. Thank you, Director McMahon. Now, I heard in your statement that you'd like to move option number 3. So I'm I have Director Ties on the speaking list, but I'm going to look to the will of the board to see if there's a seconder for that. Otherwise, we're going to go through the speaker list. So is there a seconder to move option number 3? I see a seconder from Director Toth. Okay, so we have that motion on the floor. So we're going to start debate on that. So this is debate on option number 3 on page, hang on, it is on page 24 is where it starts, and that's regarding suspending the Broadwater project. So I'm going to look for a speakers list on that. Director Ties, I had you first. Do you want to start there, or do you want to defer until after this motion is debated?
No, I think my questions are relevant, and I may, in fact, support that depending on how our debate goes. My question was how this phase 4 study will hold up over time if we were to go the other direction. If we don't initiate this project until 2025 or later, how relevant will the study be, and will we have to start over, or is it just an inflationary adjustment of costs?
Okay, I'll look over to staff. GM Rosenbaum, I guess.
Thank you for the question, Chair. How will the project change if it would be postponed until 2025 or somewhere around the time frame? For sure, it will be more cost expensive to complete, just inflation, but also currently we see a 5% increase in engineering costs on an annual basis, as well as that that the partnerships that are currently in place with the support of mining engineers to complete this project, I'm not sure if at that point in time they're still interested in participating, and they are essential in determining the economic value of the to be excavated materials. But that is an unknown. That's a risk to consider. Otherwise, it could for sure be that this area is that there are other land use applications made for this area that could prevent Site B from being available as a reservoir at that point in time.
Okay. Now, Director Ties, you had said you had a couple of questions. Is it okay if I go to the next in the list and then come back to you? Okay. Director Toth, I have you next.
Thank you. I seconded it because I think that, you know, it's worth debate and it's worth discussion, but ultimately I'm actually in favor of option 1. I think we need to move forward to get that apples to apples comparison. Do I think we're going to be building a reservoir in the near future? No. Could things change? Yes. So I think we should still get that information in hand so we know what we're looking at when we're comparing it to the costs of wells, any opportunity in infrastructure grants, and frankly, because we have a lot of people in the community that want to see a reservoir move forward. Costs be damned. And I think it's only fair that we get those costs and that information in hand to help educate our decisions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Director Toth. I'm going to go to Director Lee, and then I'll come back to you, Director Ties. Okay, Director Lee.
I just wanted to confirm my notes were correct from what I heard. That for not spending this money now, it would cost more to complete the study in coming years. We could lose our partners in doing the analysis, and we could in fact lose the site. My question is, do I have those 3 points correct?
Over to staff.
Yes, they're correct.
Okay. Director Lee, that answers your question?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. I'm going to go Director Ties for another question, and then over to Director Hiltz.
Thank you. Yeah, my second question is, would a reduction in water rates be possible if we cancel this project, or by reallocating something else to the reserves that were intended for this?
Okay, that sounds like a CFO question.
So I believe it's about $250,000. And so essentially, if something other than what's been approved in the financial plan is determined, we would have to amend the financial plan. Those reserves would go back in to the operational reserves fund. I don't anticipate that would have a material change on rates because, of course, rates have already been set. So the impact wouldn't be realized until the next year.
Okay. Director Hiltz?
Thanks, Chair. I did note that at the bottom of the report that CFO wasn't a cross-checker on this report. So it's a little bit about what Director Ties is there the financial risk? This money this is a duly useful term use of this money. So is there a risk to not using this money? Like I'm looking for why not to use it for this purpose.
Over to the CFO.
So I think that's the board's decision. And so the risk is essentially based on the project. It's the project risk. And from a financial perspective, to not use the funds now, it's those points that GM Rosenbaum has highlighted, which is factors such as cost inflations, scope change, those other risk factors if you don't proceed with the project at this time. It's not necessarily a financial risk that I would see would be material respective to the quantity of money to the whole infrastructure, which is replacement costs still to be determined, but far more material.
Okay, and GM Rosenbaum, did you want to add anything to that? No. Okay. Director Hiltz, do you have a follow-up?
The follow-up isn't direct, so I should take a pass to the next round here. So.
I have nobody else in line, so it's up to you.
Okay. So in the report, I'm seeing two pieces to the redundancy. There's the redundancy of the intake, and in terms of a water system, if you only have one intake to the main Chapman, that's a high risk. So is there as this project moves forward in the scoping of it, to separate out the intake, like a higher up intake as a redundancy, separate from the capturing of the water as a storage? Or the project seems to have two components, the intake and the actual reservoir. And would the project, as it's scoping, be able to have those as somehow independent, that you could have a redundancy of an intake by going up in a higher elevation to gravity flow to the treatment plant, and the reservoir? So like A and B, you need the intake. Do you need the reservoir? Maybe not, but you definitely need an intake and an intake higher up. So if separating it out into two chunks, is that a possibility in the future?
Okay, GM Rosenbaum.
Thank you very much for the question. The project design, the preliminary design is currently being contemplated, would allow for the intake to be used outside of the reservoir, and there would be a bypass option along it, so that in case needed, reservoir can be bypassed and the intake can function as a separate intake. And so in case of, so it would create an additional redundancy. So let's say there is a landslide or another event upstream of the current water intake. If the reservoir is full, which it will be year-round, it can be water drawn from the reservoir, or it can be directly drawn from the higher elevated intake location.
Okay. Director Hiltz, that's your questions? Okay, Director Ties, I'm just going to go back to you because I know you had, did you have other questions or no? GM, oh, you're good for now? Okay, GM Rosenbaum, I saw your hand go up there.
Yeah, maybe to add to that, the reservoir, the current design for the reservoir is the target volume is 1,000,000 cubic meter plus. This project, as it's currently proposed, would reconfirm that number, and it could very well be that it's higher, so that the return of investment would also be way more favorable. 1,000,000 cubic meter of water would already allow for about 30 days of water supply to the community. And in case Chapman Creek would be impacted. So maybe that's even more as a result of this project being completed. Thank you.
Okay, so we've reached the end of our speakers list, and this is for adopting option 3, suspending the raw water reservoir project. I'm going to look around to directors if there's any further debate that you'd like to pose on this motion as it's been presented. Okay, seeing none, I'm going to call the question. All those in favor of option 3, suspending the raw water project? I see Director McMahon in favor. Okay, all those opposed? Okay, it is opposed, so the motion fails. So I'm going to go back to directors and see what is the if there's anything else you'd like to put forward. Director Seegers.
I'll put forward motion as presented on page, whatever this page is. Sorry, wrong mouse.
Page 21.
Page 21. Yes, thank you. That it be awarded to integrated sustainability consultants in the amount of $239,980, and further that the delegated authorities be authorized to execute the contract.
Okay, so that's been moved, and I see that's seconded. Any debate on this recommendation, this motion that's been put forward? Director Ties?
Yeah, I want to say that I hear where Director McMahon's coming from, and I still think that whatever comes out of the study just does not mean that we're going to go ahead with this project, but I think it's worth examining. So I think we're still a long ways away from approving a reservoir, but I think it'd be good to get a holistic picture of the whole thing.
Okay. Director Lee?
Yes, as I stated earlier, I'm not at all sure that we have a need for a reservoir, but there's a lot of people that think we do, and they're better at this than me. So I guess it's worthwhile finishing the exploration and truly understanding the costs so we can compare against future options as well. So I think we need to finish this and understand the true costs, and then we can make a decision from there.
Okay. Thank you. Any other comments from directors? Director Hiltz?
Yeah, I'm totally supportive. The comprehensive regional water plan is about diversifying sources, and in hindsight, it probably been started 20 years ago. But this is part of that process to diversify and to look to the future. So yeah, I'm totally supportive of it, and looking forward to the data.
Okay. Director Toth?
With all due respect to Director Hiltz, I don't know that this is necessary diversifying any sources, but certainly knowing what it will give us, knowing capacity, potential for emergency management, firefighting, whatever you might have, I do think it's something we need to move forward on, even if it is ultimately from the same source as our current water supply.
Okay. Any other discussion? Okay, seeing nothing from directors, nothing from staff, I will call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Director McMahon, would you like that recorded? I see a thumbs up. Please record Director McMahon's opposition. Thank you. Okay. Anything else on this item? GM Rosenbaum, staff? Nope. Okay. Okay, so next up on our list, we have our communications. Annex F, pages 27 to 28, from Sandra Stoddard Hansen regarding the BC Ferry Authority Board of Directors appointments. I think what I would like to move is that the chair write a letter of congratulations to both James Wayne Rowe and Marlene Kowalski. And seconded. Okay, any further discussion? All those in favor? Motion carries. Any further comments on that first item? Nope. Okay, next up.
Oh, sorry, yes, sorry.
Yes.
I just want to say, I think we're well represented with having, Wayne Rowe on that committee. That's awesome.
Yes, and we've been very well represented by Sandra Stoddard Hansen for years as well. And actually, I would like the board to support the chair to write a letter of gratitude to Sandra Stoddard Hansen. So I see that as a motion, and seconded. All those in favor? Motion carries. So Sherry, is that okay? Corporate officer. Good. Okay, clear direction. Perfect. Okay, yes, we are very well represented, and we have been very well represented. It's nice to have somebody from the Sunshine Coast who has a long history here, being at the ferry. So next up, we have a letter from the Chamber from the Sea Shelton District Chamber of Commerce in regards to the special emergency board meetings on March 30th and 31st. We all received this, and I'm going to look to the board to see if they have any questions or comments or anything they'd like to do with this at this time. Director Toth?
One comment I will make, item 5B in the letter. Common misconception that carry forward projects canceled mean a tax break or some savings in taxation, when in actuality those projects were funded last year, and that the work is carrying forward this year.
Okay, thank you. Any Director Hiltz?
I was looking at 5D, and when I consider the oath of office as the stewardship of public assets, life safety isn't the only thing that I'm trying to do in upholding my oath. So I'm thinking that there are things that I definitely couldn't agree to because of the oath of office. Life safety is only one part, preserving public assets, which is what a lot of the budget is about, is protecting those public assets. And I guess I do have a bit of a question. If we were to be able to get some feedback, why 5% opposed to 8% opposed to 2%? It just seems to be kind of an arbitrary number. Things like that would help to understand why a particular percentage, if the authors were available for comment.
Okay, I'm going to look to staff because I believe that they spoke to the either CFO or CAO, if you wanted to speak. CAO, maybe?
Sorry. I'm not, I'd have to look into why that amount was arrived at, and I'd be happy to get back to Director Hiltz and the rest of the group on that number.
Okay, thank you. Director Ties?
Yeah, thank you. My comment is that while I appreciate that it's easy to hold yourself or to shout out a percentage to shoot for, I think with the way that a regional district works, that's a pretty unrealistic way of going about things. It's just I think with all the silos that we do have, we need to look at everything on a project by project basis. And if we were to get advice in the future as to how to amend our budget, I would solicit it as to saying this project is not necessary or this project needs to be amended, rather than putting forward a percentage that is not really based on anything that we can substantially go with. That's my thought on this matter.
Is the intricacies of the regional district budget, which is much different than a municipality, in that you can't just do and I think it was the most interesting to me when you I'll just use the district of Seashelt as an example, how far down once we went into those meetings on the 30th and the 31st of March, and looking at how those numbers dropped so significantly, even from Monday to Tuesday, and looking at those numbers, it was where it didn't have the same effect in other areas. So yeah, it is the regional district is a very interesting siloed project, isn't it? So it's so much different than a municipality. Any other comments, any direction for the chair or staff on this? Okay, seeing, would you like me to just write a thank you, or can I get a motion for the chair to write a Director Seegers?
Thank you. I think we've received this. We've discussed it. I don't think anything further is, needed back. If we don't necessarily, we have acknowledged receipt, I believe.
Yes.
Then that's all that needs to happen at this time.
Okay. All right. I don't see anything else from any other directors, do I? Director McMahon?
Yeah, staff has already committed to a financial update in the future, and that's the appropriate thing to do, is to wait for the financial update.
Perfect. Okay, moving on. We have no motions today. We have no bylaws, but we have directors' reports. And the way we're going to do directors' reports today is in the order in which you logged in. And I made a list of that order. So that means Area E, Director McMahon, you are first.
That's twice in a row, you know.
Yeah, well, what can I say?
Next time. Okay, I actually prepared remarks again. Sorry about that. But I've, like most people, I've had a lot of time lately to think about things. So I've made some flippant comments about how people are dealing with social distancing, but I did want to be serious for a moment, because I'm aware that my perspective on the pandemic is informed by the fact that most of my friends fall into one of three categories. They already work from home. They're writers, farmers, tech workers, consultants, or self-employed. Or they can work from home, like all of us right here, and the many commuters who are actually very happy not to be on the 620 ferry. Or they're retired or on a disability pension. So here on the coast, many of us are isolating in the comfort of our suburban and our rural homes, baking cakes, walking the dog, watching Netflix, and catching up on the yard work. The heartbreak of missing a high school prom or a sports tournament or having to wait in line outside the liquor store is hardly the zombie apocalypse. But the long-term effects will be profound, and none of us are immune. This epidemic is exposing the weaknesses in our healthcare system and our public safety nets. It highlights the economic vulnerability of so many Canadians in a time of record personal debt. COVID may not be medically fatal to most younger people, but its economic fallout will hit them the hardest. Mind you, we older people had better hope that the Canada Pension Investment Board has been buying up Zoom and FedEx rather than major airlines, restaurants, supply companies, and care facilities in Quebec. It also shows up race and class divides. In the US right now, Black people are dying of COVID at a far higher rate than white people. We don't know precisely why, but it's likely a combination of frontline jobs, crowded housing, and chronic health problems stemming from poverty and lack of medical services. These problems also exist in Canada on many First Nations reserves. So we should be alarmed. As a recent column in the New York Times pointed out, social distancing is a privilege. So those of us who are privileged need to be mindful of the results of our decisions on others in the community. For instance, while I support the decision to close provincial parks this weekend, I'm very aware that there are thousands of people living in tiny apartments in urban cores, while the elite can enjoy isolation on waterfront properties. Before this summer, we need to find a way to provide safe and responsible public access to the outdoors for all citizens. I'll close with a sobering fact, courtesy of New Scientist magazine. The fastest ever that mankind has ever been able to develop a vaccine and make it ready for public distribution is 5 years. That's the record. It was Ebola, actually. There's been a lot of press lately about getting a vaccine for COVID in 18 months, but scientists variously describe that goal as very optimistic and aspirational. We're building the plane while we're flying it. We may get lucky, but we'd better count on being in this for the long haul. Those are my thoughts.
Thank you, Director McMahon. I'm going to go next to Area D and Director Ties, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'm not as well prepared as Area E, but I do think that next time you should go in reverse order as to whoever logs in last that should go first. But I'm actually I have less time now than I did before because I have to parent half of the time. School is not in session, and so we're doing homeschooling, and of course having to entertain a young one does take up a considerable amount of time, and we have to split the workload here, but generally, yeah, shorter on time than I was before, and so we're trying to deal with that. And my sympathy goes out to everyone that has to make sacrifices on a professional as well as a personal and relationship basis because of having to deal with these matters. I'm looking forward to our discussion on short-term rentals and how they're impacting the coast and how people are still getting people to book in here this weekend. There is now a petition that has been started about closing all Airbnb rentals here on the coast for the term of the pandemic. Of course, that's something that needs to be debated, but there is certainly a community demand in Roberts Creek for this kind of thing. So we're looking forward to that debate. And in the meantime, I feel blessed, lucky that I have a large property, beautiful sunshine, a trampoline to entertain my daughter, and some gardening to attend to. And with that, I'll sign off.
Thank you, Director Ties, and so noted regarding reverse order for next time. I will move over to the town of Gibsons and Director Kroll.
Thank you, Chair. I'm sort of following along with what Director McMahon was saying. I think this whole thing is giving us an opportunity to refocus. The Prime Minister was talking about the economy coming roaring back, and I have grave concern that our roaring economy is, to a great extent, and not just our economy, global economies, are why we're dealing with this pandemic. And I really think that we have to give a little more thought to the fact that Mother Nature is really the last one up to bat, and we should be paying more attention. The other thing that and it's interesting, Director McMahon mentioned the inequalities. We have people sitting at home, feet up, watching Netflix, filing for their $2,000 a month assistant programs. Well, people who are working at low or minimum wages are still out there, driving trucks, stocking the shelves in grocery stores, cleaners in the hospitals, and these people are working through this. And I just hope at the end of it that we perhaps have a bit of a look at pay equality, the jobs that people are doing and, go unnoticed. And they're the ones out there still working right now, truck drivers, delivery people. It just goes on. So I'm hoping that we can sort of have another look at, pay equality at the end of this. Because, there is considered essential services. On another note, Director McMahon, Director Ties, Director Hiltz, and I had the opportunity of meeting with Julian Burtnick and visiting Elphinstone Aggregates. I have to admit, I was quite impressed. I was sort of preparing for a bit of a shock, and it was a bit of an enlightenment that, they have an operation that uses, huge quantities of water, and yet they have a system set up that they collect surface water and recycle water. Certainly enlightening. The fact that BA Blacktop and the concrete company are all within sort of spitting distance, so they're sort of, done something to mitigate the gas emissions with having to truck sand and gravel all over the place to secondary users. An impressive service. I'd certainly, if the opportunity in the future, like to visit BA Blacktop and the cement company, and hopefully they're operating with as much concern for the, for their impact as Elphinstone Aggregates. They're already working on reclamation plans and what the property is ultimately going to become. So I was, I'm really appreciative for the opportunity to visit, and would like to visit the other sites. Probably under new business, the province brought out a burning ban, with the exception of campfires, half a meter by half a meter. We're getting a lot of complaints in Gibsons about smoke. There's no burning in Gibsons, so it's obviously coming from the RD. And I don't know whether it's something we can deal with under new business or whether it should be brought up at the EOC later this afternoon. But it is, we're dealing with a respiratory pandemic, and yet people are burning. It makes absolutely no sense. So hopefully we can get some traction on the provincial bylaw. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Kroll. Over to Area F and Director Hiltz, please.
Oh, thanks, Chair. Yeah, since last time, I guess adapting to the threat and watching how fast that things can move when there's a clear realization of one threat. And I guess I look at the CERB as, this is essentially a universal basic income, which is being rolled out in the matter of weeks. And I'm going, that's stunning to me that something like that could happen. As an individual, I'm going to declare that I am being an inhospitable host to the COVID virus through hand hygiene and minimizing virus transmission opportunities. So I am trying my best to be an inhospitable human to this virus. In terms of adaptation, the Gibsons and District Public Library Board had a Zoom meeting on April the 6th, which was really impressive to see the board come together to continue to provide the guidance to the staff and the policy direction and commitment to working and doing their committee work by Zoom or by telephone. So, and the library continues to evolve its services. It now has online temporary 3-month card that you can get. Ancestry.com is now available by home, which is a new thing. If you want to find out about your ancestors, you can order. They're doing ebook ordering as well. They're doing looking at databases to support children staying at home in the school district. So yeah, the library is continuing to evolve its service model, and so yeah, I'd like to thank the Gibsons Library Board and staff there for doing that. So yeah, I think I'll just end there.
Okay, thank you. Director Kroll, did you have a question or a comment?
Just one thing that I forgot to mention. The Gibsons Business Watch swings into action tomorrow. We had the opportunity to share what we've come up with here in Gibsons with the District of Sechelt, and I'm of the impression that they're probably going to follow suit. I don't know if there's any appetite in the regional district. Businesses are a little different, a little more spread out. We'll see how it plays out, but if anyone does want any follow-up on the Business Watch, all the documentation is shareable, so just let me know.
Yeah, and I'm sure Director Seegers will be able to comment on that because with what's happening in the District of Sechelt and each of the rural areas, I know when we get to Director Lee, he might be able to comment on what's happening in Pender, because I know they've got a lot of stuff that's going on there, and that was one of the questions they had was around Business Watch as well. So, but first we're going to continue through directors' reports. Next, I have Director Toth, and then Director Lee, you're on deck. So, Director Toth.
I didn't think I was this late in joining, but I'll trust your list. Sort of to counterpoint Director McMahon, as a positive, this pandemic has also brought out the strength in our healthcare facilities, locally at least. It's brought out the strength of our community as we all pull together to support each other and support our frontline workers. It's interesting that, you know, every single one of us on Sechelt Council is still at work, either because we're an essential service or jobs that can be done from a distance. But almost every single one of us is still showing up to our regular workplace. So not a lot of Netflix time for the majority of us. My daughter, on the other hand, has been getting a lot of screen time, especially today, for example, where I'm in meetings all day long and my wife is busy running our store. And just as an example, I know we've heard a lot in the community about why don't we just, you know, close our borders? Why don't we just shut the ferry down and just hunker down? One example is that I've had a situation develop for me up in the interior that requires me to physically be on site this weekend. This particular thing, not something I can do by Zoom. And so I end up having to travel this weekend, even though it was not my intention to. So that's really all I got to say.
Thank you, Director Toth. Director Ties, I saw that you had something you wanted to just quickly say.
No.
No?
I did make a comment that, you know, I admire Mark's bad hospitality. That's doing a good job there.
Inhospitable environment for COVID. Congratulations. That's awesome. Good. Okay. So we'll go over to Area A and Director Lee, and then after that, Director Seegers.
Yes. I have way less personal time right now than I did before this hit. Some of it's my personality, I guess. I think when we go by order, we should definitely go by reverse order, but we should actually start with anybody that missed a previous meeting, just to make it fair here. The Pender Harbor Community Task Force was taking up a lot of my time to get it up and running, but it's there now, and I'm just a visitor to the meetings. Very impressed how the volunteers answered the bell, and even more so as the work groups got together and started working with their counterparts up and down the coast, how willing everybody was to pull their resources together and ensure that no one's left unsupported. it's the community good is all they're looking for, and they consider the community the greater Sunshine Coast. It's great to see. Forgot to mention just how happy I am with our local governments and how quickly they pulled together an effective and fully operational EOC and adapted to, for us, a very unusual emergency. I think we were the first, and I think we're the best, and it's all because of our staff, and just a great job. The last thing that I've learned is vulnerable citizens has been redefined to me. There's a lot of people that work at jobs, lesser paying jobs, lower paying jobs, and they work from paycheck to paycheck, and they're very, very proud and very valuable citizens, but they simply don't have a financial buffer behind them. And this is like thousands of people losing their jobs unexpectedly, and it's not a nice thing to see, but it is definitely our job to make sure that the social supports are there for them, and that's what I've been focused on here. The last thing I'd like to say is part of the reason I have less personal time is I do call my stuck-at-home friends, and I make a point of setting aside three evenings a week to do exactly that. And I'd remind everybody that they should be doing the same thing. It's good for you, but it's also good for them. So it's a good thing to do. So thank you. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Director Lee, and thank you for making the comment about connecting with your friends. I received a phone call last night from somebody I haven't talked to in a really long time, and it was just because she just wanted to connect and make sure that I was doing okay, because she sees me everywhere, but we haven't had a chance to connect. So yeah, and it's a very valuable thing to do. So I'm going to go over to Director Seegers and tell us what's going on in Seashelt. What's going on in your world? Nothing, right?
Nothing at all. No, nothing at all. I was saying that I got back from vacation. I missed a regional district meeting. I got back from vacation and the world had changed. And that Monday, it was the 16th, my calendar for the week totally emptied because there were all these in-person meetings. And then by the end of Monday, it was full. And I have to say, the province, Vancouver Coastal Health, our local elected leaders, our MPs, our MLAs have all been so responsive. And the communication, it's almost been overwhelming. I saw this one little picture on Facebook where you had somebody that said COVID-19 on them and they had a fire hose. They had somebody getting, all this fire hose at them. That's kind of how it's been. It's been so quick and such a lot of information. Lori, and Bill Beamish from Gibsons and Warren and I have been talking 3 times a week. And we would then share with each other what we had learned, because there was so much coming at us that individually we weren't necessarily getting all of it because we were dealing with all of the situations we were dealing with. I have to say I've been really impressed with Vancouver Coastal Health. They were one of the first to actually have a COVID-19 positive case, which required that they be really nimble and put their processes in place very quickly. So on one of the calls that we had with Vancouver Coastal Health, the mayor from Powell River indicated that their medical health officer had been on a call with the medical health officers throughout the province and came back to the mayor, Dave Formosa, and said, you need to mention to Vancouver Coastal Health that all the other regions are jealous of them because they are 2 weeks ahead of everybody else. They've put such a process in place. And it's to the point now with where our calls, when we go on the calls, we get an update and there are very few questions because everything has been asked and answered. If something comes up, they deal with it right away, but it's very good. And we have a high level of confidence in our healthcare system here. They're ready. They've been doing trainings. So one of the things that will happen is if somebody comes in here to a rural hospital, any of the rural hospitals, they will actually be transported. They know exactly how to do that. They've practiced it. They've run simulations over and over. They've run simulations on how to put their PPE on and off. You know, they're ready. So that's really good. The province and the federal government have been coming out with financial supports for individuals and businesses, and they're tweaking those and working with those. The province today said there are more coming out for businesses. And now what the recognition is to turn to supporting the social services. So a number of us on this call, actually, on this meeting, are involved with the Sunshine Coast Community Task Force. That's been set up to bring together all of the organizations up and down the coast that are supporting people in need. And they're doing a fabulous job. The website is up. The phone number is up. Call one phone number and you can get referred to any one of the organizations. There's going to be advertising going in the paper this week about that. Billboards are up. There's all kinds of things up around that. And then the Seashell Hospital Foundation has just started a program called on their Med Talks. It's going on Tuesdays. It's about an hour and a half to deal with people who have, I mean, they're stuck at home, right? So they're having mental health challenges. They're dealing with that. So that's really good. I have to say, I really appreciate what all staff have done. Both the regional district and the district of Seashell. I know town of Gibsons has done the same thing in being flexible, in adjusting processes, in just taking whatever came at them and just dealing with it. On a personal note, I have to say there's been a death in the family, not my immediate family, but in my extended family, there's been a death, and so we're having to deal with no funeral. So I understand how that impacts families. And then there's also a wedding that's supposed to go on in early summer. And our flights just got canceled the other day because the airlines are not holding those flights. So all of these things that are happening have personal implications and personal impacts for everybody. And I think as we go out and we interact with others in the community, we need to recognize that everybody's dealing with something. District of Seashell, the Seashell Business Watch, we are modeling on the Gibsons plan, and they're expecting to be up and operational next week. And we are also looking at revising our budget. We gave our staff direction to go back and reduce the budget. And we started working on that yesterday. We'll be looking more at that next week because our deadline is May 15th. So I think that's it. I just thank everybody for everything that they've done and put forward. Councillor Toth, Director Toth would like to put something else in, but thanks everybody for everything. It's been great, even though it's felt at times like we're just running in place and not getting anywhere.
Director Toth, did you have something else you wanted to add for the District of Seashell?
Yeah, I just wanted to add that we do have an extra scheduled committee of the whole meeting. It just came through on our calendars for Tuesday afternoon, I think 3:30, but it's gone now. But for those that follow along what the District of Seashell is up to.
Great. Thank you. So I'll finish up with my director's report from Half Moon Bay. So since we last met, March 30th, March 23rd and March 30th, both evenings I did a virtual town hall through Facebook Live, which were very well attended. It was just a great chance to connect with the community. Receiving a lot of messages and emails about concerns in the community about visitors, about short-term rentals, about people not using physical distancing protocols. So, just reiterating constantly on the video messages. And I know Director Seegers does the same thing with through her messaging as well, is the social distancing, how important that is, or pardon me, the physical distancing, how important that is to stay away from at least 2 meters away from somebody, but also not only that, to stay home, to stay put, or as Director Lee puts it, pick a home and stay there. For those of our friends and neighbors that do have second homes up here, I've already received emails today about the noon ferry sailing being full, which was really interesting because earlier we were on a call with BC Ferries as the board and connecting with CEO Mark Collins and Brian Anderson, who's one of the executives, and having a conversation around that ferry traffic and hearing that BC Ferries traffic is down 80% across the corporation, but knowing that they can't actually ask people and stop people from coming up here if there's nothing physically wrong with them, or if they've passed through those Transport Canada questions that have been set out earlier this week. So that's all we can do, is continue to ask people to not travel for non-essential means. We are a small community up here. We have a fantastic hospital and staff, but we can't afford to be overrun with a virus in 10 to 14 days from now. We only have so many people up here in the health profession, and there's such a huge chance of community transmission with having additional people up here. So it is a concern, and it is something that we're continuing to message out from the Emergency Operations Center as well as from the elected. And I'm just going to continue to say it. Stay put, stay in one place, physically distance. Don't have big Easter dinners this weekend. Celebrate, but celebrate within your own family, within your own home. Don't invite people over. The other couple of things I just want to comment on, a number of group calls, the calls with Vancouver Coastal Health that Director Seegers mentioned, those have been really helpful, and just giving us lots of information and knowing how we're dealing with things up here. A regional call earlier today, right before actually the board meeting started, was with Minister Robinson, Selena Robinson, who is the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing. And there's one thing, a message she wanted us to make sure we pushed out today, because this is effective today, and it is the rent subsidies. And you can apply for that and find out more information on bchousing.org. It's a rent subsidy of $300 to $500 per month, $300 for singles, at $500 per couple, or pardon me, for families. And so to help keep people stay in their homes when they may not be earning their full income. So bchousing.org regarding the British Columbia rent subsidy program that has just started today. So please make sure you pass that information out. Regarding, I've made a note on the burning bylaw, Director Kroll, and we'll follow up with that. I'll follow up with the CAO on that. I don't know. I mean, it's a larger discussion. And I would also, because it's been cooler and stuff in the evenings, I'm wondering if there's a lot more fireplaces being burnt at night as well. I know we're using our fireplace more because we're home more, so that would also put more smoke in the air as well. But people backyard burning, it's not advisable right now. So, just big high fives of gratitude to our elected team and our staff that help out with everything they can. The IT's been fantastic, coming at us from the ether. The nice big slow high five, slow motion high five. But thank you to the elected team. We had a really great meetup on Monday night. Blonde wigs and all, and it was a good chance for us to connect and find out how we're all doing, and which is important to continue to do. And as Director Lee said, give friends calls. Set aside some time for doing that. Director McMahon and I have had Zoom calls before where we just had a chat and over a glass of water or a cup of tea. And it's important because as much as what I really like about the Zoom is I can see each one of your faces in full, which I don't actually get a chance to when we're sitting at the board table. I just catch the side of your face, or you get to see, staff actually feels a little bit closer than what they do when we're in the boardroom. So, which is a really neat, unique perspective. But otherwise, it's, I'll be glad when we can meet together again, but it's not the time for that yet. And hopefully it will be soon. So with that, we have no new business today. We will be going in camera. So what I'd like to say to our audience that is listening, because they are on a little bit of a delay for anybody listening through either watching through our live YouTube or on the Zoom account, our Zoom public gallery. They're on a little bit of a delay. So just gives you a chance for our media and any of our audience members to type in a question now. And I've actually received a question via text message that I'll deal with as well. But first, we're going to have our motion to go in camera, and then we'll go to questions from our audience. So the board will be going in camera. So I'd like to have someone make a motion that the public be excluded from attendance at the meeting in accordance with sections 91C, K, M, and 2B of the community charter. So moved and seconded. All those in favor? Motion carries. Thank you. So I'm going to go to Chris in the boardroom, but first that we have a question from and this is from a resident of Half Moon Bay, Nicole Huska. I'm wondering if we should maybe deal with this one off. I'm going to ask it, and then maybe I'll let Ian answer or decide whether or not we need to take this offline. Planning is saying they don't know how the board wants to proceed with Sunshine Coast Heights development. Sunshine Coast Heights development feeling is the board said to proceed to second reading and public hearing. How does the board want to proceed? We would like second reading and public hearing in May. So we're still figuring out some of the public hearing pieces. I did hear on the call that we had today with Minister Robinson, Abbotsford and Surrey have still been able to do in-person public hearings. They've been a little creative with going into larger venues in order to keep the physical distancing. But otherwise, I'm going to go to either our corporate officer or GM Hall to, and I can forward this question to you as well because it is specific to one project.
Thank you, Chair, for the question. In terms of the planning processes, staff are continuing work on the file with the idea of being ready to take the next steps. And as you reported, the question about how best to conduct a public hearing under the current circumstances is actively being looked at. But that until we get to the second reading stage and the scheduling of the public hearing stage, we're not in a position to have to answer that yet, although we're doing work now to be ready to answer that, to keep business moving as best we can. Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you. I'll forward this on to you as well, and we can also follow up with Nicole offline.
Thank you, Chair.
Okay, I'll go over to our boardroom and see if we have any questions from our public gallery.
Thank you, Chair. So there's a question from Mike DeBelco of Roberts Creek, who asks, will there be a Zoom version of the public consultation meeting around the short-term rental B&B hosting issue, which was originally scheduled, I believe, for April 21st?
Yes, and so GM Hall did just address that, but just for record, I'll let GM Hall take that again regarding the April 21st meeting.
Thank you, Chair. So the regional district had scheduled a public hearing under the legislation of the Local Government Act for April 21st, and based on the recent ministerial orders and on associated advice from the Municipal Insurance Association and other legal bodies, at this time that public hearing is postponed. And as similar to the last question, staff are actively working with the ministry for a way to carry business forward. But at the current time, it's our understanding that a Zoom format would not meet the requirements of legislation. So to be clear, that April 21st public hearing is at the current time postponed. Thank you.
And just to follow up, as I said, we had Minister Robinson prior to coming on to this meeting. Minister Robinson spoke about this earlier, and she said there are some very creative ways around the province how they're dealing with this and sharing ideas. Surrey is one place that has gone ahead with some public hearings, as well as Abbotsford, and so that they're keeping underneath that 50-person threshold while still having those physical distancing protocols. And then Director Seegers, I saw your hand up.
Mm-hmm. One of the other ones you mentioned was one of the municipalities that did one using a teleconference format. And she was going to get more information and be able to send that out to everybody.
Yeah. Okay. So back to the boardroom. Do we have any other questions from our gallery?
There are no other questions.
Excellent. Okay, with that, we are going to go in camera. Directors, I'm going to, and staff too, you can have a Excellent. Good to go?
Yep.
Excellent. Okay, directors, may I have a motion to adjourn, please? So moved and seconded. All those in favor? Okay, happy Easter, everyone. Stay home.